Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and your guide along the way. And wherever you are in the world, I really hope you are well. This season, we have an ongoing project. We are talking about showmanship and play. If you're new to coming along the way, then you might benefit from going back to the beginning of what I call season 4. Start with episode 94. And each one of those episodes, 94, 95, 96, and so forth, are related to the same topic. In fact, they follow one from the other. That doesn't mean that you can't listen to any episode at any particular time that you want. One, because you are free to do whatever you choose, and two, it might still make a whole lot of sense, but I won't repeat all the stuff necessary to understand each term as I go along. So if you've heard the previous episodes from 94 upwards, then you will have and understand the language that I use as I go through. But all right, all that said, let's look at a quick synopsis of what we talked about last time. And what we are talking about is love. It's talking about love as the origin of play, as the thing which affords us the ability to play. And last time we spoke, I began by talking a bit about how I became a parent and how that's changed me into what my role was in the world. Caring for and making sure that my child could be free to do what she needed and what she wanted, that became a big part of my, like I would say it would be my biology. Like it just was parts of me that just came online, felt like in that time, where what I like to watch in movies and what all the sort of stuff that changed subtly in that time, and sometimes not so subtly. I couldn't stand horror movies, and we were watching Criminal Minds, I remember, back then, on and off, me and my wife, and that fully stopped. We both started strongly disliking it, and so some personality changes happened. And then from talking about that, of how as parents, and no doubt it's even more powerful for the person who's just given birth, like my wife, was probably even more so. So this is like, there's elements in our relationship with our offspring, with our children, that changes us. It brings new things online, and in this relationship we get new affordances. New things can become possible. So with it changing us, I then spoke about how the child can be seen as a kind of social glue, and I made a picture of the child. We sit around the child as adults or so, and then we look at this little baby in a similar way to how we sit around the fire. You can go back and dig further into that. And then we spoke about this idea that one of the, like for play to be able to happen, and this is something that some people have used as a criteria. We have our five criteria, so fun and seemingly purposeless and self-motivation, and that there are rules involved and imagination and improvisation. But some people say that you need to have this relaxed field, a space or a sphere or so, where within this you are free to not concentrate on the things that you have to do, but you can do the things that you want to do. And that is called then a relaxed field. And this is where we are picking up again in today's episode. So without further ado, let's jump into the world of play. And where we pick it up today is love and relaxed field, and love's role in creating this relaxed field. And then by pushing this idea of the relaxed field a little bit, we will see how it lines up with showmanship. So I'm going to start this with a quote that will set things into perspective. It's by a woman called Alison Gopnik, and from a book of hers that I will start talking about in a minute. But She says, all the processes of change, of imagination and learning ultimately depend on love. We can learn from the discoveries of earlier generations because those same loving caregivers invest in teaching us. It isn't just that without mothering, humans would lack nurturing and warmth and emotional security. They would also lack culture, history, morality, science, and literature. So right there we see already a big, bold claim that love is the thing which affords us through the fact that the discoveries of earlier generations, we're learning from them. But it isn't just like that. It's nurturing and warmth and emotional security, which is good. It's just some nice things, but we can do without it. She's also making the claim here that there would be a lack of culture, history, morality, and science and literature. So the link is the love that's given and the protection that's offered for the children is what allows the emergence of these wonderful human constructs and relations. So, Alison Gopnik, wonderful. She has lots of interesting books, and the book that we're going to start talking about here is called The Philosophical Baby. She did a lot of research, and that with babies and young children. And that book, The Philosophical Baby, begins by saying, she says, human beings don't live in the real world. That's really interesting. Human beings don't live in the real world. And as a scientist and as a person in the world, she is, of course, fully aware that we all have to engage in the world in practical or Darwinian dictated needs. But she, just like you and I, spend a significant amount of time watching stuff, scrolling the many feeds of our devices, reading, and whatever else. Like, and start talking about morality, and history and culture and literature and science that she mentions in the quote above. These are all aspects that we take that are relational to us, but that are not necessarily Darwinian in their structure, so that we don't have to engage in those. And you move to another culture, you will have to behave differently, and morality is different in different places, etc. So we know this. We focus a lot on what could be. We focus on our dreams and hopes and imaginations about what the future could bring. And not just in daydreaming, but in actively engaging in the world to change the future for ourselves. Like, we might take a class, we might save money to go on a trip, and along the way we might almost be on that trip. We can playfully imagine ourselves into the many places we want to visit and the situations and people we might encounter. We even live ourselves thoroughly into the minds and situations of people that don't exist, and we get immensely rewarded for it. Like every time we read a novel, we do this. We get to experience what it's like to be someone else. We get to hear their inner monologue. We get to participate in their experience. And this is the hallmark of great fiction, whether it is film or written stories. So this touches a little bit then on what she means when she says we don't live in the real world. Now, we live partly in the real world, but we also live partly in an imagined world. Children and adults spend a lot of our waking existence engaged in possible worlds other than our own, but our relationship to the imaginary and the playful aspects are different. For adults, the play is something extra and not strictly necessary. Fiction is a luxury, as we saw during the pandemic, how art and artists repeatedly were prohibited from performing long after sports and air travel and other public gatherings had resumed a relatively normal operation. We adults, we separate our projections about the future. We separate them out as useful imaginations, almost, if not completely, part of reality. Kids, on the other hand, does not worry about whether the imaginative projection is real or not. They engage wholeheartedly in a game because it's fun and interesting to them, regardless of whether it's completely fulfilling the adult requirements for reality and thus importance. It is not that the kids can't tell what's real and what's made up. It's just that they don't think that it's relevant. As Gopnik writes, it's just that they don't see any particular reason for preferring to live in the real one. So the world could at any point be anything. We could change it. So how is it possible for them to live like this? Why can they endlessly speculate and imagine and not worry about where the next plate of hot potatoes will come from? The answer is that it was a person. It's like or many persons. Why can they do this? How is it possible? And there is people who actually are responsible then for taking care of the more fundamental things, like what we spoke about last time, as the 4 Fs: foraging, fighting, fleeing, and fornicating. So all the things that has to be done is done by someone else. So the children, they don't have to do it. And this person is, in the first instance anyway, it is the mother. She is giving them the sustenance from when they're born and onwards. She makes sure that the child has what they need, so that they don't have to worry about taxes, and they don't have to worry about all those things that we have to do in real life. And tax is still a pretty imaginary thing in a sense, but even if it has practical reasonings and whatever. But foraging, going out looking for food, or fighting if somebody comes to take us, or fleeing if there's all of these things. This is, in the first instance, the mother that has been doing those things. Eventually also the father, but the mother was the first creator of the relaxed field. It is her who first bestowed this freedom for learning, exploration, and play on the child. Of course, in real life, i.e. in nature, the mother is also far and above the main source of corrections, strict guidance in all forms, including physical punishment. But this is all part of teaching the child or the pup or whatever it is, the animal or so, it's to function in the community and in life in general. Life is no bed of roses, yet going all the way back to the dawn of the mammalian lineage, which is, as far as I know, is found in the Triassic Age, some 300 million years ago. A mother's main role since then has been nurturing, feeding, and protecting her offspring. Mothers keeps their children warm, fed, and safe, and she will protect her babies sometimes with astonishing ferocity. When any trait, anatomical or behavioral, is in any way related to birth and survival of offspring, natural selection goes into high gear. Any nurturing behavior that increases the chances of survival, this will be encouraged by natural selection. The evolutionary, once we have stumbled on this thing that we're going to start taking care of our kids, which is what the mammalian line does best, bar none, then once you have started to take care of your kids, the better you take care of your kids and the more likely they are to survive and thrive, the chances are natural selection will grab onto that thing and amplify it. So the evolutionary pressures to protect, care for offspring are very strong. Any mother that, for whatever reason, didn't care for her young, did not keep them warm enough so that some or all of them died, would not do well in the big game of evolution. And this kind of neglectful behavior would eventually be outcompeted by the nurturing behavior. We call this behavior mothering, which per definition, like dictionary definition, means being caring, protective, and kind. All these mothering attributes, they are all kind of synonymous with another word, which is love. Love is an intense feeling of affection. In my dictionary, the example sentence to explain love is, babies fill their parents with feelings of love, which is very apt for our use here. When we love someone, we want to care for them, to treat them nice and tenderly. And they say that love makes us blind. It makes us only see what's good in someone and to overlook their flaws. Perhaps though it is not really a blindness, as more like a kind of filter, as any individual has good and bad traits. And I'm certainly flawed in many ways, but my wife and my daughter manages to see past these shortcomings to those parts of me that are good. They have a filter that makes my positive traits matter more. They foreground certain aspects of me as mattering more. And I think that filter, if you can call it that, that is love. In biology, it's pretty uncontroversial that the function of feelings and emotions are to guide our actions. In its simplest form, if we feel pain from the heat of the fire, then we want to pull our hand out of the fire. If we feel thirsty, we drink. Human beings can override our emotions. We can choose not to eat when we are hungry, or indeed leave our hand in the fire if there is some reason we deem more important. We spend hours sweating and grunting with deep burn in our muscles as we lift weights and run on treadmills and gyms to alter the shape of our bodies, to get fit. The reasons might be vanity, but it might also be part of a desire to become acrobats or to better be able to protect one's vegetable patch from marauders. I don't know, depending on where you live. Feelings are not reflexes, making us act like robots. They are natural, they're natural selections, guides in a way towards behaviors which has served our species positively for a very long time. It's the whispers of our ancestors. So they are gut instincts, gut instinct guides towards certain actions. And in biology, everything is messy and complicated. So to say that the origin of something as complex as love comes down to just one thing is an oversimplification. But that said, I do believe that the evolution of mothering and parenting in general played a very important role in the origin of love. There are many amphibians, reptiles and fishes who just lay their eggs and let their offspring fend for itself. Maybe these have some kind of proto-love that us parental species can't even imagine. But if this is the case, then the feeling would probably be so different that it would warrant actually being called a different name. Amongst mammals like orangutans, elephants, dogs, cats and whales, the fundamental experience of love is probably quite similar to ours. But with our highly developed intellect and the incredible complexity of human communities and human life, I do believe that the human experience in its full spectrum is in a class of its own. One aspect of this is how wide we cast our net of love. And so far we've mainly talked about motherly love and how that affords us a relaxed field. But from the sort of primordial love between mother and child, the capacity for love and care has grown. As I mentioned earlier, in regard to myself, becoming a father, my experience of love certainly grew. But the capacity for love and the degree of participation in childcare we find in human males is not a common trait amongst most animals. Among chimpanzees, most of the females in a troop, they all care for the tribe's infants, while chimpanzee males takes very little interest in the offspring, even if it's their own. The fact that all females participate in childcare, but the dads don't, not even with their own offspring, this could perhaps indicate that the leap to expand one's love is shorter for females. Once the feeling of love for one's own infant has emerged, the leap is perhaps not so big for that feeling to include other infants than their own. All juvenile animals share certain characteristics like large eyes, proportionally larger heads and rounder faces, and these features makes us understand that the animal is an infant. If these features are part of what triggers a mother's maternal feelings, then it's no surprise that it triggers the feeling in other mothers as well. But a human being's capacity for love and care is enormous. For a starter, the mother and the father loves their children, and both participate in the child rearing, and this in itself is rare enough. But within a human tribe, all adults actually partake in the responsibility of taking care of the children. So slowly, as the difference between the chimpanzees and us, but as we grew to become human beings, one of those things that changed was that we took greater and greater interest and care in our young, and that might be one of those features that are just, we share 98% or something of a DNA with chimpanzees, but that's one of those behaviors that absolutely not reliably. There are so many men who don't have this come online and for whatever reason don't do it, but I think it is a big part of a big feature of the human species. So it's grown then, our capacity to be interested and take care of our children. And in fact, when that started to come on, the more it comes online, that the men also starts to take care, and these roles gets built up and solidified, and the relationships of how this comes in, that it becomes the normal way of doing it, whether it comes in through culture or whatever, then chances are this will also make that tribe of humans, early humans, make them more stronger and more possible for them to take care of themselves in a harsh environment. So, but this is it, and it's growing all the time. And in fact, we humans don't just love other humans; we also love animals. And to strengthen the point about juvenile features triggering love, we can add the fact that we humans love baby animals, possibly even more. And in studies, we reliably find that baby animals are cuter than adult animals, which amongst the amount of baby animal pictures and videos on the internet and the Japanese industry and the cultural cuteness that's called kawaii, that this reflects our attraction towards these juvenile features. This means that there is something about the juvenile proportions which resonates. And we're going to talk quite a bit more about these sort of specific traits of the young and the juvenile in the next episode. But our love has grown to include other species and even plants, perhaps most manifested in the love that we might feel for a tree, if I'm not pushing this too far here now. Because further we could say that culturally, through spiritual systems like Buddhism and Christianity, the idea that one should love everybody, even one's enemies, has expanded love through practice. It might not be there naturally. Maybe we are naturally suspicious, and there's been times in the past when it would be good to be naturally suspicious to someone that you didn't know. But now, the time has come for some of those things to change, things that might be, we might look at it and go, oh, there's some terrible things if it turns out that this is an innate thing. But getting out of those things and really grasping the concept of it, that is a slow process. Like how when the Greeks first invented democracy, there was only, I can't remember the exact figures now because I'm speaking off the cuff here, but it's 10% or something like that of the population could actually vote, and it was just the rich men who owned land. So out of the Athenians who could actually vote, it's just a tiny minority. And then slowly more and more people would, because Aristotle thought that part of the thing that allowed us to be able to think about philosophy and all that was that we had slaves. He saw it as a necessary thing, and then machines came along a long time later and went, okay, now we don't have to. And then slowly the idea of freedom, that it actually applies to everyone and who it applies to, and that everyone has their own right, like the UN's Declaration of Human Rights and of the rights of the child, and all these, they come and they grow, and it's like was at the end of the 1800s in that the very first country, I think it was New Zealand, who was the first country to give women the right to vote, and so yeah. Anyway, it's like slowly we like the ideas are there, but the ideas take root slowly in society and in the world, so that they go, they've already had the idea that everybody should be able to decide what to do. We call it democracy. And then it's taken from the time of the Greeks, like hundreds of years before our common era, and for it to actually start being everyone. And still we are not quite there, but every fight that's fought and might push us a little closer. But in these troubled times that we're in at the moment, it seems like some of those fights that have already been won has been lost, and that fight might have to start again in certain parts of the world. Anyway, where were we? Well, what I'm saying is that love created this relaxed field necessary for a child to play. First given by the mother, then amplified by the father stepping in, and then the whole tribe taking care of all of each other's children, and given this room to breathe, a chance for a child to not just focus on the things that they have to do. Remember, I talked about this a couple of episodes ago, how Max Maven had made this clarification, or this good way to think of it. There are things that you have to do, food and survival and all this, and there are things that we would like to do. And that's where the most human things, the things that are self-motivated, that are fun, that are apparently purposeless apart from something that possibly in the future. It's done for its own sake, self-motivated, rules that we make up. And not rules that we do that so that we don't starve, but rules that we make up because that would be a fun way to be in the world, to do, using our imagination and improvisation to explore it. Yeah, this is what love afforded us in this relaxed field. So, and this love that was there was a love which quite possibly arose, as we've just talked about at length, from parental love of their offspring. And it grew into all sorts of other things, but the mum and the child, I think that's the crucible. So love then created a place for children where they were safe and didn't have to worry about the pressures of adult life. And freed from the pressures of natural selection, the juveniles were able to do whatever they wanted. They could engage in something simply because they felt like it, because it was fun or interesting. And the relaxed field created by parents and tribe was arguably then this first space of total freedom, a new kind of freedom. I'm sure there are always limitations, but the kind of freedom is exceptional. So let's talk a little bit about that, play and freedom. Because as evolution went on, the degrees of human freedom increased. And from before that too, like the play of animals, like the tiger and the deer from our earlier example, previous episode, their play is closer to a practice. That's like a practice as a preparation for adult life. And it's still self-motivated, and no doubt it's thoroughly enjoyable, but their repertoire of play behaviors are more limited than that of primates, which again are more limited than human play. And with the astounding amounts of complexity that we find in human culture, language and behavior, there is just so many paths one can take. Everything can become the subject for play. The play must be free. In fact, play is as close to an immediate expression of freedom as you can imagine. As we've talked about before, you can't force someone to play. They can sit in on a game and play lip service to it, but a child that's screaming at another child, telling them they have to play, has missed the point. Whatever the outcome of the screaming has on the other child's ensuing behavior is not very likely to be play. When a human child is unrestrained from the worries of real life, it gives it unparalleled degrees of freedom. The relaxed field of human play is the most free and creative sphere in the world. Guided only by inner motivation, we are as free as we will ever be. And the romantic poet and philosopher Friedrich Schiller, he expressed something like this in his Letters on the Aesthetic Education of Man, where he writes, "Man only plays when he is, in the fullest sense of the word, a human being. and he is only fully a human being when he plays. Man only plays when he is, in the fullest sense of the word, a human being, and he is only a fully human being when he plays. So there you go. It's like he only plays when he is human. Like when when you're engaged in rage, or you're out there just struggling to find enough food. Those are not the prime moments for play. And when you play, then you are exhibiting, according to Schiller here, you're exhibiting the most human features. And only when we're only fully human then when we plays. So this is a very powerful statement. But so if you're unencumbered by the pressures of biological survival, a human being is free to be motivated entirely by their own interests and inclinations. In this space, we can relate to each other as anything we want. Relationships can be transformed. Any one of the children can, through imaginative play, become an adult. They can become the leader, the shaman, the hunter, the warrior, the mother. Human children stand free to not just imagine in a detached way what it's like to be one of those roles. They get to become those roles. They grasp a certain essence of the inner experience of the mother or the shaman, however limited and colored it is by their own character and limited knowledge. The same transformations can be made with objects even. Like, it's not just that you feel what it is like to become a mother by imagining your way into it and caring for a little doll or something. Like, you can also become a thing. Like, but you can you can imagine that you're a rock. I don't know how much kids do that, but you can transform objects is kind of what I wanted to say. That a stick can become a spear or a telescope or a magic wand or a snake, and a rock can become a turtle or a star, and it can be you, or it can be your grandma, even though I don't know how often you pretend that a rock is your grandma, but hey, anything's possible in play, as I have just said. So the stick, which might in actuality with the pressures of natural selection be for protection or for digging roots, can be anything when those pressures are released or relinquished. Like maybe the stick is lying next to the hearth where they are burning the fire, and this is the stick that they use for digging roots normally, but before they know it, that stick that the kid is now getting to borrow might be a telescope. Which would be weird if I'm like, because the description that I was imagining in my head when I was kind of in a cave. So if they play that it's a telescope, that would be pretty sweet. It would be like he's playing the future when we have telescopes and things like that. Anyway, we stand free in the relaxed field to transform the objects of the world, the entities and the individuals of the world, and also the relationships between all of these. Everything can be altered, and we can live ourselves into it, which means that we then learn. We learn so much about the world, we learn so much about things, and we learn so much about others. So the relaxed field emerges from the mother's love, or the love of parents for their child, which eventually expands to the love and care of a tribe for a child, and then the care and love of the tribe of itself, and who knows. But within this emergent and growing field, human freedom evolves. And if being fully human is a goal in itself, then finding a way to remain within a relaxed field would be the way to go. And I believe that getting the most out of being human and to experience the full spectrum of what a human being has to offer is a goal in itself. And one of those things that my mother told me that stuck with me, and which in seed form might have led to my deep interest in play, was that play was the child's work. Play is the child's work. And I'll delve deeper into this in a bit. But if for now it's enough to say that if this is true, and I believe that I have continued to have the same occupation my whole life. As a child, play was my work, and now that I am an adult, my vocation, what I do for a living, is in a sense indistinguishable from play. And this is exemplified with the amount of people that find it hard to grasp that one can squeeze through 2 tennis rackets for a living. So to generalize this, I'd say that in a transformed way, all of us show folk and all artists in general exists within a relaxed field of our own making, at least when we are creating and when we're doing our work or whatever, our play work. And we still count play as one of our most rewarding ways to spend our time. And going one step further and foreshadowing what's to come, I believe that in a further step of transformation of play, a showman, when doing a show, creates a relaxed field where his audience experience is deeply playful. That part of what we do as a performer when we stand in front of people is to afford the audience this relaxed field. So what we do isn't exactly play. There are many differences between the spectator's self-motivated activities and kind of participating by watching a show. But in the way that a showman invites spectators through the joy of entertainment, the spectator is filled with a genuine interest, which is deeply akin to self-motivation. Like when I'm really interested and I want it to go and I'm having the best time, that's so fun, then just this fun is making them genuinely want it to continue. So the moment the spectator's attention that's been grabbed sort of becomes transformed into genuine interest, where they want to know what comes next. They want to know more about what the showman has to say and show. When they lean in, as I've described it in an earlier episode in season 2, and then they are willingly participating in the performance. It's self-motivated, as we talked about. It's voluntary now. And when they trust you enough as a guide or a host to take them along the way. And through these transformations, I believe that we see the importance of understanding play. That's why we're doing all these episodes, so that we can better grasp showmanship. Because there's that link as well, of course. A relaxed field could also be seen as where we talked about in the beginning about what showmanship is. It is when an audience and a showman face each other on its simplest level. When a showman and an audience face each other and they are in a reciprocal attention, where they're paying attention to each other, where the showman is giving and the audience is receiving, and then a new kind of realm of being comes into existence, which is what we call the show. This is the experience of the show. It is the event unfolding in that moment, where the 2 points becomes a third point that becomes a triangle. And in there we have an area of interest, as we've called it. But could it not be called also a relaxed field? When the relaxed field emerges, maybe it could. So a further alignment here in what we've talked about between showmanship and play is that in the parentally created relaxed field, the parents are actively affording the child a particular kind of situation. And the children are more like a recipient, which is afforded the relaxed field. The parents are giving and the child is receiving. So this uneven state of one giving and affording the other the receiving, and the emergence then of an altered state of being and experience, where the two parents are affording the child to not worry about any of the things that one has to do to survive, but only then they emerge into a space where different rules apply, where imagination runs free and play is king. So this unevenness of giving and receiving then seems to me to be a perfect mirroring of the area of interest or the show which emerges between a showman and the audience. So the showman's presentation invites the audience to participate in the show by giving them his skill, his charisma, his carefully crafted presentations, the fun and the games and all this. Much like how play needs a relaxed field to flourish, an audience needs to experience that they are within a relaxed field to fully join in the coming into being of a show. So in this way we see yet again the deep connection then between play and showmanship, and how this relaxed field, possibly emerging from the parental love, whatever that love is there, I think that love that a showman needs to have for their audience, to know that without the audience they are not a showman, they're just a man. No show can come into existence. I mean, you can sit there and imagine by yourself, but that is a different process to what happens when a showman and an audience meets. So we need to be humble in the way that we meet them, and to know that without the audience we are kind of nothing, but with the audience we can create this incredible, once we have created this relaxed field, the most amazing human creations can come into being, and the most amazing feelings and experiences and all this. So there we go. Let's end it there. Yeah, I hope that idea there of the relaxed field and how it connects up with the area of interest. For those of you who have already heard about these ideas back in season 2 and now, and I hope that you have made some of these your own, that the emergence of the area of interest between the showman and the audience, that this is because I find that to be quite fundamental to my understanding of what it is that we do, and what it is that I try to do when I step into a gymnastics hall and there's like 200 people, adults and kids sitting around. What is it that I'm actually trying to do here? I'm trying to make something happen, not just me standing in front and doing some pre-prepared stuff, but I try to create an event that we do together, and that event is the show. I have a whole bunch of cool stuff that I've prepared, but it's to make that thing real and to make it everybody feel like this is it. I was there, and the whole room was transformed. I hope that when I then talk about the relaxed field of play, that you see this connection and all that. I sometimes, I'm doing most of this talking here completely on my own in the I was going to say in the dark, but I'm not sitting in the dark. But I hope that that you see some of these connections and that they excite you. And what would excite me would be if you left me an excellent review. If you think this is a worthwhile pursuit, then leave a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. It does really help me. It does really. And it would be lovely to get more people as awesome as you to check out this podcast every second week as it comes down. Thank you if you do it, and if not, thanks for listening. And until next time, take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.